Welcome everyone to this webinar, Facebook for Your Business. I'm really excited about this webinar. It is the first of what we hope to be several about different social media applications. My name is Jenna Jantz. I'm the social media lead here at Vertical Response, and I have asked Rahim from Involver.com to help me explain what Facebook is. Just to give you a little bit of a background, Rahim has been working with businesses for a long time. He is a three-time entrepreneur. He's been part of the big and small businesses, starting his own company and becoming one of the youngest directors ever of a publicly traded company in the United States. Rahim is currently the CEO and co-founder of Involver.com. Involver is one of the first companies to understand the potential impact for brands looking to leverage Facebook in order to engage influencers, raise brand awareness, drive traffic, and ultimately increase revenues. So with him being the expert, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. If you do have questions, you do have a question box there. Please go ahead and submit those. We will try to get as many as possibly answered. Also, there will be a follow-up after this webinar that will include the recorded version of this presentation.
All right, thank you, Jenna, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. It's going to be we're going to talk about a lot of really great case studies and really do our best in trying to demystify exactly what's going on in Facebook and where the opportunities are and how we can all be successful as businesses marketing on Facebook. So what I thought we might do is begin by defining what social marketing is all about. It's something that I'm sure we've all read about or been told about, but exactly what does it mean and how does it impact us? And then really examine the opportunities and the challenges of a marketer trying to run a marketing program on Facebook. Throughout, we'll be discussing best practices as well as great business examples, and I think those are really the best way to articulate, how other companies have had success and also how other companies have had challenges and how they've tried to overcome those challenges. And then at the end, we'll dive into what we do here at Involver, what our marketing suite for Facebook does, how it can help solve some of these challenges and really capture the benefits that Facebook has to offer. So let's start with what is social marketing. So, right now it feels a little bit jargony, right, when you think about it. In the end of the day, marketing is marketing. Marketing on social networks is a little bit different. And oftentimes when we've thought about marketing online, we've really thought about that in the context of direct advertising. We've thought about, for a lot of small businesses, running ads on Google AdWords, right? And on social networks, things are a little bit different. We've all heard and we've all read that traditional advertising doesn't work. What does work, though, is trying to find ways of supporting the existing behavior on these social networks. So clearly there's a lot of time being spent on social networks, and being able to support those activities, the largest one being consuming content and sharing content. I think there are more than 4 billion pieces of content that are shared on social network or on Facebook in particular every month. And for a marketer, figuring out how we can get involved and participate in the consumption and sharing content among friends in various networks is the way that marketers are finding success today. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but a slightly simpler definition is one where you think about social networks not so much as a strategy but more as a tactic. So social networks are just one channel among many others that you need to drive your marketing program through. So just like email. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Rahim, my question is really just, I understand that it is a different channel, but what really makes it different than traditional marketing?
Well, what makes it different than traditional marketing is that in the end of the day, customers don't like being advertised to in social networks. So that's why things like text advertising, direct response ads, banner advertising hasn't worked very well. So how the way social marketing differs is that it's really putting the marketer in the center, or as an enabler of the existing activities that users are engaging in on social networks. So it's, for example, Starbucks giving out a coupon that is attached to a really cool video that people start sharing around among their friends, as opposed to running an ad for 20% off a latte if you come in, during these days of the week. So that's the way it differs. It's very content centric, and it is very it's really putting marketers in the center, or as part of the existing activities of sharing and creating content on these social networks.
Okay.
And I think that the definition I think this whole concept of marketing on social networks will become hopefully clearer as we go through some examples. So if we move to the next slide, we'll see that here's some of the social marketing examples that I'm sure we're all familiar with. So the things that we're hearing about today are Twitter, Facebook, blogging, YouTube, Yelp. A lot of the activity now online is happening in these 5 different places. For example, I think the latest stat is 10% of all online activity is taking place in social networks.
Wow, that's great.
So places like Twitter and places like YouTube and Yelp, where, again, this idea, and I'll bring it up a few times and kind of really try to contextualize this, but this idea of, a friend of mine calls it connected consumption. This idea that we're no longer just, for example, reading a review of a restaurant on a website the way that we might have done so in the mid or late 90s. We are now actively not just, reading content, but we're participating in creating content. So we're, in the case of, let's use, an example like Yelp, we're reading a review of a restaurant. We are indicating if that, review has been helpful by giving it, let's say, 4 out of 5 stars. We're writing a comment, on a particular review to say if it was helpful or not. And then in some cases, people are actually going ahead and writing the reviews themselves. So it's a much more active rather than a passive experience. And thinking about the change in behavior, this change in behavior from one that was more passive to one that is increasingly more active, is really important to think about when constructing your marketing programs and just developing a philosophy for your business in how you intend to approach marketing on social networks. It's no longer just a one-way communication channel, right? So
yeah, no, it's definitely, businesses need to be on places like this.
Yeah,
they're
they need
missing
to
out.
be on places like this, and they need to encourage, again, we talked about this idea of encouraging and supporting the existing behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, on Yelp, you'll find that, let's just use a very simple example. There's a restaurant in your neighborhood. You're thinking about whether or not to go there, and there are 10 reviews on there today. And let's say you go ahead and you read a review that wasn't as positive, and that's something that happens all the time because, again, it is more of a sort of democratic type of experience where everyone can participate. Mm-hmm. In the past, I think if there was, let's say, a negative review written about a restaurant, the owner of that restaurant would go in there and they would likely just delete it. In the same way that if let's say you try to keep negative news out of the newspapers, or if you have a customer that wasn't really happy, you sort of ignore them and just focus on the ones that are happy. Online, and particularly now in social networks, it's open, it's democratic. So what will often happen is the restaurateur, rather than deleting the comment, they'll now go ahead and respond to it, and they'll respond to it right on Yelp, and they'll respond to it in a way that everyone can read it. Mm-hmm. And it'll spur a conversation. And it's this idea that you can't because it's not a one-way communication channel. It's a two-way communication channel. You can't stop this behavior from happening, so you have to support it. And what you'll find if you have a few minutes and you check out reviews on Yelp, you'll see that restaurateurs are getting involved. And what's happening is when they do respond, they're finding that the person who has written that negative review will actually most times engage with them, and ultimately the resolution will be a happy one. And if I'm there looking at the review and I see this activity happening, I'll say, actually I would like to dine at this restaurant. I feel like the person who runs it is very much a part of my community. They're very much a part of communicating with me and with the audience. And so there's this idea of a real personal connection, I think, that can be made by a marketer really getting involved in the conversation, which again is this idea of content being created and shared. And in the case of Yelp, it's through reviews.
So with an example like that, you were giving restaurants to be on Yelp. Would a lot of the questions that we get a lot of times are, should I be on all of these platforms? Do you think a restaurant should be on Yelp in addition to all of these, or are there very specific ones?
Well, I think the simple answer is yes. The longer answer is, in what way do you get involved in all of these different channels? So I'm making an assumption, and likely a sound one, that your audience is likely on Twitter, Facebook. They probably read blogs. They watch videos on YouTube, and if you're a restaurateur, for example, they're reading and writing reviews on Yelp. So in that case, your audience is in all of those different places, meaning that you have an incredible opportunity to engage with them wherever they might be on all of these places. And whether you like it or not, for example, if you do not go, let's say you're a restaurateur, keeping with that example, and you're on Yelp, if you don't go ahead and let's say create a profile and start to interact with people who are commenting on your restaurant, people are going to do it for you. So it's going to happen whether or not you like it or not, because that's the nature of social media today, right? That's the nature of what's happening on the web. I think the things to consider, in addition to in addition to this idea that you really do indeed need to be everywhere, is how do you balance the time that you invest in trying to maintain your presences across all of these different channels with the return that you get from it. And you know what? Sometimes, particularly if you're a small business, you have to prioritize, right? And so maybe you will only choose one or two different channels that you really are spending a lot of time on and you're active on. And maybe you'll leave some of the others where there today isn't really a lot of activity happening from your audience for later, right? Because you can't really have everything, and we do need to understand that. And I think if it's going to vary, again, it's going to vary from business to business. If you're a restaurant, again, Yelp, you have to be on Yelp today, right?
Right.
If you are in the let's say the entertainment business, more than likely there are going to be videos that you've produced that are now being shared on YouTube. So I think it does depend, and you do have to start prioritizing. But number one, understand that you do need to be paying attention to all of the major social channels that are available today. And two, whether you like it or not, your audience is going to participate in them to some level. And once you've identified at what level your audience or your customer base is participating in each of these channels, you can start to prioritize how you allocate your time in maintaining your presence there.
Makes sense.
All right, fantastic. So let's move on to Facebook. So, the reason why Facebook as a platform is so interesting is because when you start to ask yourself those three questions that I've just put forth, I am going to imagine that Facebook is going to be at the top of that list, because today Facebook is almost ubiquitous. It's growing at a rate. There are over 250 million members today, but that is growing year over year at an astounding rate. In the last 12 months, it's grown it's grown double, and the growth rate is just increasing day over day. And so Facebook, as we all know, which is why we're here today, is just an absolute must for every business thinking about how it evolves its marketing programs online. One of the really great aspects of Facebook as a platform, besides the obvious one of there being everybody there today, is that it's a very active channel. So, for example, some of the other channels like Twitter, you have a lot more people who are, let's say, just reading different Twitter posts rather than writing. So the balance between, again, active and passive involvement is one where there are a lot more passive users than there are active ones. On Facebook, it's very different. People are very active, and they're very active because it's become this utility for communication, which is as important, if not more, than some of the other emerging channels like blogging. We look at, for example, email as being the number one communication channel online, and indeed it is, and will remain to be. But Facebook is sort of in the same magnitude. And so we talked about the amount of content that's being shared online in Facebook, and it's an astounding rate. I think Facebook is the largest photo site on the web today.
Wow.
It's just astounding, right? So, photos, videos, comments to one another, even now emails through the Facebook inbox, lots and lots and lots of content is being created and is being shared every single day on Facebook. So it's very, very active. So that is definitely one major characteristic of Facebook that we need to keep in mind as we go through this presentation and as we go through thinking about taking action on really building out your marketing program for Facebook. Mm-hmm. And the other one is that people are very connected on Facebook. So the average number of friends a user has on Facebook is 120. More than likely, that's more people than someone interacts with on a monthly basis in the offline world.
Yeah, definitely.
And so Facebook's really now being used, when we talk about a communication channel, it's being used as a contact kind of management center. It's like an address book. It's the new address book, right?
Yeah.
So anything, for example, that gets posted on your wall, and we'll go through some of the terminology in a second, but if someone, let's say, sends you a public message and posts it on your page on Facebook, all your friends can see it, right? And the way it happens is that, the friends that are most connected to you, the ones where you, for example, share the most number of mutual relationships with, or the ones that you write the most emails to on Facebook or share the most videos, those people are going to see more and more of your content on their own homepage. Mm-hmm. So it's a really nice optimized way for people to really keep in touch with not only their close network, their family, friends, and colleagues, but also their extended network. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing, the idea of not just there is a lot of sharing and consumption of content happening on Facebook, but this idea that it's happening in a very connected manner. It's happening in a way that is that always involves friends, family members, colleagues. No interaction is done in a sort of in a closed room. And that, again, now will add, hopefully, some more definition to this idea of social marketing. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
You said there's 250 million members. Kind of how do you figure out who you should be connected with as a business, or is there a place to maybe find demographics or send your message so that people can find you as well?
Mm-hmm. So this is a really great question. And the way that we recommend looking at this is that the same people that interact on your website, the same people that you have on your email mailing list, the same people that walk into the door of your business every day, are the same people that are on Facebook that are part of your audience there. It's not a different audience. It's the same audience. It's just that they're choosing to engage with you in a different channel. So when thinking about how to reach these people, do you have a large email mailing list that you can send an email out to with the link to your page on Facebook for people to join and become a fan of? Are you able to put on your website a little banner or a little text link that says join us on Facebook, so that people who are visiting your website can now interact with you, maybe consume some of the same content, share some of the same content, but do it on Facebook with you? Or even, if you have more of a retail presence, I'm seeing more and more businesses now have stickers on the front door of their stores that say find us on Facebook, or find us on Yelp, for example. So think about what are all the existing channels where you engage with your customers today. Prioritize them, based on, for example, volume or web savviness, and then reach out to those channels and ask them to come and find you on Facebook. Make it very easy. Send them a link. That's the best way to find your audience on Facebook. And I'll take that a step further. The reason why this is one of the best ways is not only because it's the fastest way and the most low-cost way, because you already have a relationship with your close customers, but you have the added benefit on Facebook, again, because the average person is connected to 120 friends. Your business, once your existing customers are connected to you, then becomes marketed to their friends as well. So a really neat part about Facebook is that any activity that happens, for example, if someone comes to your fan page, and we'll talk about what a fan page is, but it's your presence on Facebook, it's your page on Facebook. If someone comes to your business's fan page on Facebook and fans it, right? We call it fanning it, or chooses to opt in to, let's say, receiving updates from you and your business. That activity then gets shared with that person's 120 friends. Now, do you start to see the opportunity for a marketer trying to promote its business on Facebook? When we talk about viral marketing, that's viral marketing.
Yeah, it's almost 120 referrals right there.
And what did it cost you, right?
Right. Just your time.
So, exactly. So now let's go back to that definition of what social marketing is. Well, we talked about it's not like direct marketing. It's not like running ads on Google. So in the marketing world, what more and more marketers are talking about is the difference between paid media and earned media. And I don't want to get too much into the details, but I do feel it's important to address conceptually. So paid media is this idea of buying ads. You're buying those 120 leads or relationships. Earned media is the idea that your one existing customer, for example, can produce for you 120 new leads or new relationships without you spending a single direct dollar in order to acquire them. And so to add a further definition to this idea of social marketing, it's this idea of capturing earned media, the idea of engaging with your customer base to produce more customers.
That's great. I had an interesting question from the audience that came in while you were talking about that. Just because I think that Facebook sometimes gets a bad rap for being only for college kids or high school kids. Mm-hmm. They were wondering if, from a targeted marketing aspect, should you only focus on young and hip, or is the audience getting older?
So that's a great question. The audience is getting older. In fact, the fastest demographic is adults 35 and older. The absolute fastest demographic has been women 55 plus. That might sound a little counterintuitive based on what you think Facebook is all about, but this has really been driven by this phenomena of women using Facebook to reconnect with high school and college classmates. And that trend has really accelerated over the last 6 months. And that demographic has grown substantially. It's almost gotten to the point where everybody is on Facebook. Everybody.
It sure feels like that way.
Yeah, I mean, my mother and father are now on Facebook, and they're looking at my page and seeing what I'm up to. And it's interesting the way it happened was, and this is just a very real life example, right? My mother was saying, I was at this family gathering, and they were all talking about your trip to New York and all these photos that you had posted, and I didn't even know that you had gone to New York, and you never even sent me these photos, and I didn't even think about it because when I'm because now the way that I post photos is I just post them to my Facebook page, and all of my friends just see them, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't even have to think about email, sending out a special email to my mom, for example. I just assume that everyone's going to see them there. But we quickly realized that the reason why she hasn't seen these photos or other photos from this year is that she's not on Facebook. So she got onto Facebook. Now she is on Facebook. As soon as she got onto Facebook, Facebook then recommended, my aunts, my uncles, people who had gone to college with her as potential friends that she should get connected to. Now she's connected to them as well. Now she's, looking at photos of, kids who are, kids who now are much older, of people that she had gone to high school with. So everybody, this is just a personal example, and I'm sure we all have this. But, again, Facebook is not just for college kids. That used to be the case when there were 10 million users on Facebook, back 5 years ago. Today, the breadth of users is, much better distributed, and in fact, the fastest growing demographic are adults 35 and over. So should you be on Facebook if you're trying to market to an older customer? Absolutely. And we can go through some case studies of other businesses that have used Facebook effectively for that demographic as we go on.
Perfect.
The last point I want to make before we move on here is that I often will get this question of, okay, so there's a lot of content, there's a lot of people sharing photos on Facebook. There are a lot of people sending emails or messages back and forth with their college classmates. But is it really a place for businesses? Is it really a place for marketers? Absolutely. One of the most fascinating facts is that there are more than 8 million people who fan or opt in to a business's page every single day. More than 8 million. So when you think about the idea that I believe now more than 60% of Fortune 500 companies have an active Facebook presence, when you think about the $200 or $300 million that is spent every year, and now that is growing, and I'm sure will double with the rate of growth that they're having year over year. Marketers are absolutely on Facebook, and their audience is absolutely starting to engage with brands, with businesses on Facebook to the tune of 8 million of these new relationships with brands happening every single day. So the opportunity is absolutely there. The behavior is absolutely there. Now we need to think about how we as a business capture that trend. So let's move on to the next slide. And just before we go too much further into this presentation, let's just talk about some of the key terms that we'll be using. And feel free to ask a question if there's a particular term that I use as I go on that you would like me to clarify. So the first one is a profile. What's a profile? So a profile is a page on Facebook that's unique to the individual. So every single person on Facebook has their own page. Think about it like their own website, right? So I have my own page on Facebook. My mother has her own page on Facebook. And now Starbucks, for example, has its own page on Facebook. We all have our own pages, and these are collectively called profiles. In the context of businesses, we will often call them fan pages. We often also hear, well, what's the difference between a group and a fan page? I have a group, or I've been part of a group before. Now there's a fan page. What's the difference? Well, a group is really for grassroots, communities, or very campaign-driven communities. Like, for example, support my son in running the 50-mile or 50-kilometer race at the cure for cancer marathon next week. That's if you're trying to create a group and get people to rally around a cause like that, you'll create a group. For our purposes as marketers, a group is not useful. Okay, it's just not going to be useful. So when you think about, if you're asking yourselves this question of, one, should I create a group or a fan page? You want to create a fan page, and we'll talk more and more about why. And two, if you have an existing group, I don't have the link with me on top of my head, but I can pass it along later. There's actually a way that you can transfer, if you have an existing group, into your fan page. So that is also available as well.
Do you usually recommend people to set different lists or different even profiles for maybe their personal information and then also their business information?
That's a really good question. So, recently Facebook allowed you to create different lists. So, for example, someone who I have a professional relationship with can see, let's say, just they can see everything that I have on my Facebook page, but they can't see any of my photos. But my broader list or my family list can see everything, including my photos, for example. And, I think the jury is still out on it. It's something that's quite new. I, for example, keep everything the same. I don't have different lists. The one thing that I do, though, is that I use this concept of limited profiles. And now this is this concept of different lists and this concept of a limited profile, for example, is relevant to you as an individual and you and your own personal profile page, not your fan page. So with fan pages, there is not a concept of different lists for different customers. It's just one collective list of customers. Just to quickly answer, the way that people are using different lists for their personal profile page, I use this concept of a limited profile. The way it works is when someone wants to become a friend of yours, you can add them and you can authorize the friend request. But before you do so, there's a little drop-down menu that says add to a list. I'll often add them to this limited profile. And the way that this works is that if I have a lot of photos that are personal, for example, let's just say, again, they're of me, like they're social photos, there are family photos, and maybe I don't want every single person seeing these personal photos because in real life I wouldn't share these photos with them. I can just add them to my limited profile, and in that way they can still interact with me on Facebook, they can still write a comment on my wall, they can still share content with me, but they can't see my photos, for example. And that's the way that I use it. I keep it very simple, and I'd encourage everyone to try to keep these things as simple as possible, because the more you try to build in a set of rules and a system for managing, one person versus another, it just becomes more complicated and adds more overhead to you. In the future, hopefully, Facebook will streamline the way that you can maintain different relationships with different sets of customers or friends, and you can take a look at those, take a look at what they roll out with in terms of new features on an ongoing basis. But for now, keep it simple. Use a limited profile if you want to hide your photos from a certain person. So let's talk about applications. So applications are, think about them as pieces of software, for example. Applications are different pieces of software that you can use on Facebook. But because it's on Facebook, it's got some really interesting properties to it. One, you don't have to download the software. Two, you don't have to install the software. Three, you don't have to log into it because you're already on Facebook. And four, and perhaps most importantly, you can use that piece of software along with your friends. You can use it with your friends. So I'll give you some examples of popular applications. Gaming is really popular on Facebook. So a lot of people will play games, let's say Scrabble, on Facebook. In order to play Scrabble, you would need to use the Scrabble application. And you could find it if you go into the search box on Facebook and type in Scrabble. You'll see a list that comes out with all of the Scrabble applications. And to use them, you just have to click on go to or add or whatever the call to action is. Once you start using that application right there inside of Facebook, you'll see a list of friends that are also playing Scrabble as well, right? So it's interesting. Like, let's say you have 120 friends, like the average person does. You'll likely have 3 or 4 people that are also playing using the Scrabble application too, and you can actually click on their names and invite them to play a game of Scrabble with you, right? In the case of applications that have more of a business utility, let's talk about surveys. So a lot of businesses are using survey applications, for example. Involver has a really cool survey polls application that a business can use to set up different questions about, let's say, for example, let's use a restaurant example, what's your favorite item on the menu? And then they can share that with their customers, their friends, or they can add it to their Facebook page so that their fans can come and find it and take the survey. And then, people can take the survey and, the survey will tell them, how other people have voted. It'll also ask them to share it with their friends. And ultimately, it's got a lot of business utility because you as a marketer are gathering real, genuine market research right from the mouths of your customers. So there's sort of consumer applications, there are business applications, and applications we found are the best way of really making your presence on Facebook much more engaging and much more interactive for your communication with your customers. And page, of course, we talked about what a page is and what a fan page is. And if you need some further definition, please feel free to write a comment, and we can address that as we go along. All right, so there's clearly a huge opportunity on Facebook, right? Undoubtedly. But why isn't everybody doing it today? All right, well, there are a number of different reasons. Let's go through 3 reasons, and then I'll probably add in a fourth bonus one. So first one is branding. So we think about MySpace and Facebook. I think that's a good reference point. So on MySpace, if you go to MySpace, you'll see that it's kind of a free-for-all when it comes to branding. You can make it look as kind of branded as you would like. You can really customize things, and you can almost really just bring your entire website into MySpace in terms of the look and feel of it. On Facebook, it's a little bit different. In fact, it's actually a lot different. On Facebook, there is a very clean, a very straightforward, a very structured layout for the Facebook website. And so when thinking about how to bring your brand over, you need to be really cautious about what the kind of branding guidelines are, what the branding best practices are on Facebook. So, we found that you can absolutely bring, for example, your branding, your logo, your colors into Facebook, but it has to be done in a way where it's not overbearing, right? So again, think about it philosophically that you as a business are just another player. You are just another constituent in this community, right? So, there's a reason why on a fan page, the place for you to upload your logo is the same size as the place for you to upload your photo on a personal profile page, right? Because it's very horizontal. You're really playing on a level playing field. So most people will usually really get hung up by this, and I think it's very simple and straightforward. Start with limited branding. Don't try to be too overbearing. Don't try to make your brand the center of the marketing experience, but more just a part of the experience. Just the way someone's personal profile picture is a part of the experience on their own individual profile page. The second one is content. So we talked about, okay, what's social marketing? Well, social marketing is about supporting what people are doing already on Facebook. Well, people are sharing and creating a lot of content. So for a business, how do you get involved? What type of content do you want to bring into Facebook? I'm going to use an example that we'll talk about more later, but Us Weekly, a magazine publisher, was trying to think about, well, we want to be on Facebook, and we have content. We have news articles, we have photos, we have videos. All of this stuff exists on our website today, but we don't really know what to do with our Facebook page. And we said, because it's the same audience, it's the same customer base, bring the same content over. So, for example, if you're a restaurateur and you have a menu on your website, bring that menu into Facebook. If you do a lot of Twittering, right? If you're really active on Twitter, bring your Twitter feed into Facebook. And we'll talk about tactical ways of doing that in a second. But thinking about content, the best way to think about it is what types of content do you already have available? Instead of trying to figure out how to create new content just for Facebook, think about what content do you already have that's out there, all right?
I think that's actually one of the best tips. We get that question all the time because people seem to be overwhelmed by how much time it's going to take them to be on Facebook. But
Right.
I really try to tell people just start with a list. To figure out what you already do. Are you already
Right.
writing these emails? Are you already posting these white papers online or things like that?
Yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? It's not about that. It's not. Again, what makes Facebook unique is that there are a lot of people on it, and all of those people are connected to one another, and all of those people are creating and sharing content. Those three characteristics should not change your outlook or your approach to your content program. It's the same content, same audience. The benefit is that it can just travel faster this way. You can get it to your customers faster, and they can share it with new customers much, much faster. Other than that, same content. All right. And let's talk about efficiency. And I think it's very related to the point that you made there, which is, okay, as you were saying, Jenna, that a lot of, if you do need to bring your content into Facebook, you need to create your fan page with the branding and all of that. How do you, and then of course there are other 4 or 5 other social channels that you need to be in as well. How do you, if you prioritize Facebook as the number 1 place or the number 2 place for you to be, how do you make sure that you're not just, spending 10 hours a day trying to manage it? Again, on content creation, what's existing content? And then in terms of managing all of this stuff, think about ways of really automating the process. And we'll talk about tips and tricks and tools that are available out there. But keep this in mind. How can you automate the publishing, the sharing of content? How can you make it easier to respond to your customers by creating maybe a process around it that once a day you'll spend 15 minutes to respond to any comments that someone's left on your Facebook fan page? Really think about what needs to get done, right? What types of tasks, and we'll talk about those tasks as we go along, and then how you're going to manage all of that, because as business owners, we know that time is very scarce. All right, so let's talk about some best practices, and I'll kind of try to whip through some of these so we can get to the case studies. So one, people have a very short attention span nowadays. It almost feels like everyone's kind of a little bit ADD. Well, this is actually much more pronounced on Facebook. So rather than writing really, really long emails or really, really long comments, it's all about sort of trying to be as concise and trying to get to the point as quickly as possible. So the reason why Twitter has become so popular is because it's limited to 140 characters, right? Mm-hmm. On Facebook, people are doing the same type of thing. It's very short communication loops, and so try to think about that. And the benefit to you as a marketer is that the shorter, the less time it's going to take you to manage your presence.
So I completely agree on social media. The shorter is better, but how do you recommend to get that longer, more information content out to your audience after they get enticed?
So that's really important. It's a very important point. So this is the reason why email exists, right? So for example, once you've got that relationship with people on Facebook and you've got them added to your fan page, for example, now you've established, if you haven't already, a relationship with them, and you can now use email, for example, to communicate longer forms of content. So while Facebook as a channel might not be the place because people are just so ADD and people are doing a lot of things at once, there are other richer, less noisy communication channels like email, like traditional mail, for example, like things like these web presentations that we're doing today, where once you've established the relationship, and Facebook is a great place to establish the relationship and then maintain it, you can start to engage people in richer ways through other communication channels that support longer form content. So one is shorter communication. Two is what types of content can you create and can you publish that will really get people excited and get people to pay attention and cut through noise on Facebook and get people to share your message with them. So think about video, for example. Videos are really popular on Facebook. In the past, producing video was very expensive. Today, it's not, and it's for two reasons. One, the cost of technology has dropped significantly. So you can go and buy a flip video camera for $99 and use that to capture really high-definition video content, and then you can download a free piece of software on your computer, or pay someone a reasonable amount of money to really format the video for you, right? So say, again, use the example of a restaurant. You can take a video of, a walkthrough through your restaurant, for example, and you'll actually see a lot of these on Yelp, right? So one is technology costs have gone down. The other one is that people's expectations for quality, particularly on social networks, have changed. So it's no longer about really professional, produced television quality content. It's just about sort of raw, genuine, show me the way it is, right? It's kind of the real deal. So, amateur produced content like what you can take with a really inexpensive video camera can be produced, and then that content can be published on your Facebook fan page and sent out to all your fans who will be able to share it with their friends. Or what about a coupon offer, for example? If you're, let's say, giving away a 2-for-1 of your product or service, why not use Facebook as an opportunity to do it? I think there's a really great case study for, I think it was for Splenda recently, where they were able to get, I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say 15 or 16,000 people on Facebook to sample their product by, sending them a short message with a little coupon and a link back to their website. Like, that's huge, right? Think about Facebook as a direct marketing channel now for you, right?
And I love those big examples, because it seems like today, at least for when I go out there in search of the best examples, the most popular ones seem to be the bigger businesses. Mm-hmm. I've seen great Facebook campaigns from Target, and I know the one you're going to go over with
Mm-hmm.
US Weekly is a great one, but I would recommend for all small businesses to look at these examples and learn from them because Facebook is free, you can do the exact same campaigns just on smaller scales.
All right, now that's a great point, Jenna. Let me give you an example that might hit a little closer to home. So there's a coffee shop in Houston called the Coffee Grounds. Instead of an S at the end, it's a Z, and you can actually Google it if you want to find out more information about this coffee shop. They have used Facebook and Twitter to achieve similar types of results as some of the big examples that we've talked about. For example, I believe once a month they launch a new type of coffee drink, like a special, a promo, that they used to just put on a little blackboard in the coffee shop itself, and so people who were regulars and came into the coffee shop every day would see that, oh, okay, well, for the first week of every month, there is this new coffee that's being offered to everyone. This is it's kind of cool, it's seasonal, there's a good price, I'm going to check it out. And it was a kind of a fun, cool thing that they used to do with their customers at the store. Now what they do is they actually let everybody on Facebook and Twitter know about it first, right? And what they found is the number of customers who walk into the door has doubled, right? In fact, and why has it doubled? Because the reach on some place like Facebook is significantly greater than the number of people that they can reach with their store every day. How many people do they get coming into their store every day? Not nearly as many people as they can reach on Facebook, right?
Very cool.
So they've actually even gone as far as selling coffee on Facebook and Twitter. And the way it works is you can place your order on Facebook and through Twitter, right? Let's say you're coming in and you want like four coffees or what have you. You can actually send them a message now on Facebook or Twitter with your order, and it will be and the time that you're coming in, and they will have it ready for you when you get there.
Wow.
Right?
That's cool.
Isn't that so cool? And think about now, it's no longer just Facebook as as a social network, as some website that people use online to waste their time. It's a utility, and it's a utility that is now integrated into daily life, right? It's really become an extension of this business, this coffee store's business. And so when you're thinking about Facebook, when you're thinking about social media, think about it along these lines. Think about how a platform like Facebook can be used as an extension to your existing business practices, not as something separate and unique and something that is a trend or a fad or something that you have to do just because another business or your competitor is doing it. Think about it as a utility and as a real viable extension to your existing business practices. And we've kind of covered the other 2 points, which are, one, Facebook pages are a great tool to distribute contents to a massive or large audience. So, for example, if you publish a coupon or a photo on your Facebook page as a brand, it will automatically then get pushed out to all of your customers on Facebook, okay? So that's the reason why Facebook pages are just so much greater than Facebook groups, and which is why Facebook pages need to be used. Like, that's why every business needs to be using a Facebook page, because it's got this awesome, incredible distribution channel to all of your customers on Facebook. The second one is think about how to stand out. And we talked about using video or cool links or coupons, but just think about kind of at a higher level, how can you stand out? How can you really push your engagement on Facebook, your presence on Facebook to the next level? And this example of how this coffee shop in Houston, a small coffee shop in Houston, was able to stand out high and above all of the other coffee shops in its area, for example, by just letting people submit their orders on Facebook and having them ready when they came to pick it up, right? Something very simple, very straightforward, not a huge investment. and maybe it won't even get used by 90% of your customers, but a few of them will take advantage of it, and that's how you can stand out. And that message will then get shared with other people, and pretty soon people are going to be engaging with you more and more and more because you're giving them really cool, unique reasons to do so.
Perfect. And before we go on, I know we have a couple more slides of information and a great case study about US Weekly, and I have seen that a couple people have had to duck out since we have reached the 11 o'clock time, but I would encourage you to stay. We'll try to speed this up a little bit, but there also will be a recorded version that we will send out in the follow-up.
Okay. Why don't I do this? Why don't I go straight to the Us Weekly case study?
Okay.
And we can talk about how this has. And I'm kind of just flipping through some of the screens right now, so you can kind of get a sense of what all of this looks like. All right. Sorry. I think I missed the screen that I wanted. All right. So here we go. So let's start back here. So if you go to facebook.com/usweekly, you'll be able to see what the Us Weekly page on Facebook looks like. You'll see that it's very rich and interactive, and that they're publishing a lot of content on Facebook every day. Now, they're a magazine publisher, so certainly they publish a lot of content. We, as let's say a small business owner, we may not publish 50 pieces of content today, and that's okay. But think about the different types of content that Us Weekly is publishing, and how Us Weekly has used it to really engage their customers. So let's go to this slide with news. So, for example, do you blog? Does your business blog? If you do blog, it's a great reason to bring your blog into Facebook, right? Maybe people won't come and read your blog every day, but maybe you'll be able to engage them on Facebook because they're logging in every single day, right? And Us Weekly actually blogs about once an hour. If you think about maybe your blogging schedule, if you do blog, using Facebook pages, it doesn't matter if it's every hour or once a week. Whenever you do blog, that post will get automatically published to all of your fans through your page. Okay, and I'll talk to you about how this is exactly done right at the end.
And we actually do that as well on our Facebook page. And I'm surprised every time we have comments on our Facebook page because of our blog post. And because it's that RSS feed, I don't have to do anything. So we get additional comments just because we made it automatic.
Exactly. And that goes to this concept of being efficient with your time and doing it automatically. And Jenna, that's an example I think that is very relevant across all businesses who are blogging today. The second one is video. Do you guys have video? Maybe you have some video on YouTube today, or maybe you produce some video on your website. Bring that video into Facebook. Look at Us Weekly. They're able to. They put about 1 or 2 videos a week, and people love videos. They love watching and sharing videos, and it's really become a very effective marketing tactic for Us Weekly just by putting these videos on their page. Twitter. Do you tweet today? Us Weekly uses Twitter in an interesting way, where what they do is their news stories actually get tweeted. So the way they've set it up is that anytime they blog, that blog then gets pushed out to Twitter. Now, using a Facebook page and one of the Involver applications, Twitter for Pages, they're able to get that same post that goes out on Twitter to get pushed out to the Facebook page here, as you can see on the slide, and then that then gets also republished to all of their fans. So anytime a news story goes out, you're actually hitting people not only through the blog and through an RSS feed on Facebook, but also through Twitter in a shorter format with just the headline. And so you're kind of letting people engage with you in whatever way seems most comfortable to them. Polls. We talked about polls and surveys. I'm not going to go too much into detail because we already covered them, but they're very popular for Us Weekly. They'll ask all sorts of questions, and they actually now use these polls to inform their editorial content. right? So they'll ask, what photo or what story do you think is interesting? They'll get their fans to vote on it, and then that data will go back to the editorial team. Now, again, that's a big example, but in a small example, you can think about a coffee shop, again, using a poll or a survey on their Facebook fan page to get their fans to vote on what type of drink they should introduce next month, for example. And then, again, what's really interesting is that whenever somebody interacts with you, and this is just, again, this is the type of behavior that happens on Facebook. When someone interacts with you, let's say they take a poll, their answer, along with a link back to your page, gets published to all of their friends. Sprint, for example, what they do is they use the Involver live chat application on their website and on their Facebook page. That's introducing an even, a heightened concept, which is can you get people now can you get your audience to interact with you in multiple places? Absolutely. So as I said before, it's the same audience online. It's just people will choose to interact with you wherever they feel comfortable. Some of Sprint's customers like to interact with them on the Sprint website. Some of the customers like to interact with them on Facebook. So what they've done is they put this chat application on the website and on their Facebook page, and people can chat among one another wherever they might be, right? Very, very cool type of concept now, again, of tying in all the different presences that Sprint as a brand has and connecting them all together. For example, Clarins will use, we talked about the coffee shop example. Clarins uses their Facebook page to get people to, sign up for a sample, and then once the information is captured, they'll send out the sample or more information to them. So, Jenna, to your question of if Facebook's all about short-form information, how do you communicate longer-form information? Well, here's a way to do it. You can Clarins does it through email and through traditional mail.
Yeah, and I will just mention, since I believe most of the callers on the line are vertical response customers, we do have a tutorial that actually will walk you through this process to link your vertical response account and your Facebook page to your email to collect email addresses.
Very, very cool. And I'd really encourage you guys to check that product out because it's something that we've seen a lot of success with. So let's look at coupons, for example. Snapple uses coupons as a way of getting people to become fans of their page. So it's, well, in exchange for you becoming a fan of our page, we'll give you a coupon for a free Snapple, right? And what's nice about that is that once someone becomes a fan and takes the coupon from the Facebook page, all their friends hear about it too, and then they can also access the coupon as well by becoming fans. So the summary is, you need to think Facebook is an important place for you as a brand, as a business to be. The more time you spend on it, like for example, hooking up your page to your vertical response account, that's going to take a little bit of time because you're going to have to, figure out how that's done. But the time investment is absolutely worth it, right? So should you be doing that? Absolutely yes. Should you be adding other types of content onto your Facebook page? Absolutely yes. Because that's going to help you acquire more fans. It's going to help you really build your community, your audience on Facebook. And the more people you have as part of your audience on Facebook, the larger your marketing channel is. So now, Us Weekly, they started at 2,700 fans, right? That's a big number for a small business, but for them, it wasn't. It was small, right? Today, they have more than 200,000 fans on Facebook. That all happened in a span of 100 days. Why did it happen? Because they followed some of the things that we talked about today. They started publishing content into Facebook, the same content that they already had on their website. They started responding to comments that people were leaving on their page. They started sending free offers, special offers to their Facebook fans, to really give them something of value and meaning for being part of the community. That turned into a massive marketing channel for them. Same thing with the coffee shop. They've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are now fans of theirs on Facebook. Anytime they have an event at the coffee shop, anytime they introduce a new product, they've got a marketing channel, a direct marketing channel that they can reach out to, in order to interact and engage with their customers. And thirdly, think about what types of compelling content can you publish into Facebook, and give people a reason to share your content, right? So, we talked about video, we talked about photos, we talked about coupons. What types of compelling content, make most sense for your business? And why will people consume it? Why will people interact with it? And why will people share it? Think about those things when choosing the types of content that you publish. And in the end of the day, you think about, all right, so you have all of this stuff happening on Facebook, so you clearly need to be there. All right, I'm going to go and I'm going to spend all this time in trying to figure out how I market on Facebook. But how do I prove that it's actually working, right? How do I prove that it's working? Well, the success can really be measured in the numbers, right? So, for example, let's take a look at the Golden State Warriors, the NBA team. They started using this live chat application. They got 3 times gain in unique visitors to their website month over month. Okay? Their fan base grew 8 times. All right? Let's look at another one, Sunkist. We're all familiar with Sunkist soda. They had 400,000 people watch their videos on Facebook just by merely publishing them into their Facebook page. Kenneth Cole, they put out a poll. They had 14,000 fans or so. More than half of them took the poll. Imagine having more than 50% engagement with your customer base on Facebook just by, giving them a reason to interact with you, a reason to share your brand, your business with their friends. In this case, Kenneth Cole, chose to use a poll and look at how impactful it was just by measuring the growth by numbers. And again, Us Weekly, we come back to this example. In about 100 days, they grew from 2,700 to 200,000 fans. They went from really not a lot going on their Facebook page to a 3,000 times increase. Well, again, what does that mean? I mean, in terms of in context, the best way to think about it is there was nothing going on before. Today, it is their Facebook fan page is so important to them that it informs editorial content decisions in the actual print magazine. That's how important in 100 days Facebook became for Us Weekly, right? And it can become that important for you too if you start to really think about how Facebook can be important for you and really start to invest some time in making it happen. And I'll sort of just end with an important note about email marketing, because I know that we are all email marketers here today, and we're very familiar with how email marketing can be impactful. Us Weekly, again, used email marketing to get their Facebook presence started and continue to engage that base. So one, they had a very substantial mailing list. They emailed all of those customers, right, who subscribed to the magazine. Or in your case, maybe it's all the customers who subscribe to your newsletter or who buy products from you. They use that email list to get their Facebook page kick-started. And then two, they use their email. They use email marketing to send longer form content, right? So longer editorial, longer newsletters, contests, promotions, special offers. In your case, maybe it'll be white papers. It might be a big blog link or an article. They use email, right? Now that they've established a presence on Facebook and they've grown that audience, they've got a bigger group of people to reach out to, and then they use email to actually communicate longer form pieces of content. So email marketing and Facebook pages are very closely tied to one another, very complementary. I'm going to end with the Involver products, and I'm just going to spend about a minute on them. And I'll give you a link that you can check out online to learn more. But we at Involver have developed a marketing platform that really provides you with a set of tools to make your Facebook page successful. It automates the publishing of all the types of content that we talked about here today. It lets you run coupons. It lets you publish video. It lets you, create polls and surveys and quizzes. It brings your blog into your Facebook page. Basically, if you go to the Involver.com website, you can pick and choose the applications that you want to place on your Facebook page, drop them right into your Facebook page, configure them so you can set up your Twitter ID for the Twitter application, and you can start now publishing your Twitter feeds into your Facebook page. Or in the case of coupon, you can create a coupon using the Involver application and publish it right to your Facebook page so all your fans can see it. It's very simple, very straightforward to use, and again, very complementary with email marketing. I'm actually just going to leave it there and encourage you guys to go to the website for more information. Again, it's www.involver.com. And then for any additional questions, I guess we can, if there are any, if we have time, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I might have a better solution just since we have gone over a little bit. We have a VR marketing lounge, which I do believe several people here are a part of. And along with the follow-up where I will send the recording to this webinar, I will link to that as well. And I think I might try to copy several of these questions over so that we can try to answer them there and we can share them to everyone. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Rahim, for all of this information. I have taken so many notes, I don't know what to do with them all. But again, just everybody watch out for that follow-up. There will be more information about Facebook, the recorded webinar, the lounge, and then, of course, Involver as well. So everybody, enjoy your Friday. Thank you, Rahim.